All right, class. First off, as always, good day. I'm glad you're here. So, this video is going to be about the amendments 6 through 10. Okay. Now, these are straight from the Constitution. Okay. So, it says, Sixth Amendment says, in all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the right to a speedy and public trial by an impartial jury of the state and district wherein the crime shall have been committed, which district shall have been previously ascertained by law, and to be informed of the nature and cause of the accusation, to be confronted with the witness against him, to have compulsory process for obtaining witnesses in his favor, and to have the assistance of counsel for his defense. Okay, now I know that's a lot, so let's break it down. So the first part, in all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall have a right to a speedy and public trial. This is where some issues pop off, because the thing is, I don't know what goes on in some people's heads that a speedy trial means you get arrested, you're charged, you see a judge, and you have a court right away. No, that's not how it works. Okay, your own lawyer needs times to set up your case and things like that. And build the case. Talk to the witnesses going forward, not only for you but against you as well, and to do their job. Okay, so basically, this was created because back in the day, kings, queens, nobles, so they used to arrest people and have them stay in jail. And so when people would be like, "Hey, when's my husband, son, or whoever? When they have a trial? Oh, it'll be soon. It'll be soon." So it is going to happen, but in reasonable time, because again, back then, some people were kept in jail for a really long time just because the nobility, the king, queen, whoever, wanted them to stay in there. you know so that caused some issues. Okay, and public trial, because hey, people got to see family members, so that, so for them to try to basically let no one know what happened in your during your trial, that's kind of stuff that happened back in the day, and that's kind of some shady stuff that our government's like, no, 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 none of that stuff. Okay. The next part, to be have an impartial jury. Now, I know this sounds bad the way I say it, but just hear me out. Your jury should not care about you, in the sense that they shouldn't look at you going, "Oh yeah, he looks like a criminal. I'm going to make sure that he goes to jail." Or, "Oh no, no, look at this person, looks like a sweetheart. They wouldn't lie when they are testifying and this and that." You know, they shouldn't base on things on how someone looks, how they present themselves. They're supposed to look at the facts. So even though you may be tatted up, you may look like you are angry at the world and some of that, that shouldn't matter. The jury should look at the facts and say, yes, this person's innocent, or no, this person's guilty. But based off the facts and not just what they perceive or what they, like, oh, this reminds me of this bully Bobby back when I was younger. No, none of that stuff. Okay. Um, so also, which district shall have been the previously obtained by law, and where the crime was committed. So basically, if you commit a crime, let's say in this town, right, your court is going to be in this county. They're not going to move you to another place, because why? The crime committed here was here, so the people in this area should be the jury of the crime. You know. Now, here's the thing: do they ever move? How come you hear about court cases being moved and some of that? Mainly because the person who was, let's say, murdered, somebody who was injured or some of that, or a famous place that was destroyed or things like that, whatever the case may be, if the people in that area have a strong feeling towards that person, place, or thing, whatever it may be, then that person who's being accused of killing, destroying, or whatever the case may be, that thing is not going to get a fair trial, because people are going to have some preconceived notions of that person the cops arrested, so that person has to be the one who committed the crime, ergo they are guilty. So that person's not going to have a fair trial. That's why they would move it to another area, part of the state, where people wouldn't know about this certain person, place, or thing, and be like, okay, sure, um, okay, sure, this person did this, or oh no, look at the facts, they no, they didn't. Okay, so that's the thing that they're supposed to look at, and not necessarily just like in a sense, oh, whatever they hear, things like that, whatever the case may be. The next thing, to be confronted with the witness against them. Yes. So if someone accused you of a crime, telling the authorities, hey, I saw this person do this, I saw him do that. When you, let's say they have some evidence, quote unquote evidence against you, um, you go to trial, you get to see who's accusing you, you know, of this crime. This is where sometimes people get, off from charges and stuff like that. And I hate to say it, but it's true. Sometimes when it comes to things like rape, some of these women who have been raped, who went through this certain trauma, don't want to see that person because they went through an experience at the hands of this person, this man, and yeah, they don't want to see them. So that's why sometimes these rapists and stuff like that, they get away with crimes because the witnesses, just can't bring themselves to go to court and say this is the guy, things like that. He did this, and because then they know that the prosecution is going to have a chance to question them, and they're going to be mercilessly going after them because again they're trying to win the case for their client. So yeah, it does happen. Okay. The next thing, you get to obtain witnesses in your favor. So not only is the jury going to hear people talk about you, saying, "Oh yeah, he did this, he did that. Oh, this guy's mean, he's evil." You get to have witnesses say things for you. Now, this is what I tell students every year. If you ever find yourself in this situation, be sure that your people who are your witnesses, who's going to say stuff about you, character witnesses as they call them, that these guys are not, in a sense, like trying to be big and bad and tough and things like that. Because yes, they're going to look good in front of your lawyer, who's questioning them. But when the other side, the prosecution, comes at them, um I've seen it where the witnesses becomes hostile, and they're just, I don't want to talk to you. I ain't gonna tell you nothing. Shoot, what, you going after my friend, and it just makes them look bad, which and then makes you look bad. You want to get somebody with a squeaky clean record as much as possible. And that's why I say somebody like teachers, we kind of have to have squeaky clean records, or else we could lose our credential and stuff like that. Um, so yeah, you want somebody who is trustworthy, someone who if the prosecution tries to go after, they have nothing to go on, nothing to really go after this one person, mainly because that person is like squeaky clean. Okay. So that was the Sixth Amendment. Okay. The Seventh Amendment says, in suits in common law where the value of controversy shall exceed $20, the right of a trial by jury shall be preserved, and no fact tried by jury shall be otherwise re-examined in any court of the United States than according to the rules of the common law. Okay, now, first part, basically saying if there's a case between you and somebody else and it goes over a certain amount of money, back then, again, $20 was, a lot of money. But nowadays, $20 is $20. It's not really much, but there is a certain amount of money where if it goes above that, like some certain amount is stolen, things like that, then yeah, they'll have a trial by a jury. But if it's below that number, it will be the judge who basically hears the evidence and then makes a ruling based off the evidence. Okay. Um, no fact tried by jury shall otherwise be re-examined. Again, this is why our court system is so clogged up, because basically everyone who, just about everyone, I should say, who goes into the system, um, they tend to try to reappeal, to appeal their conviction. And the thing is, this is only meant for if there's a real true mess up in your court case. So like if one of the jury members, was somebody who um you upset back when you were younger as teenagers, and they're like, you know what, I'm gonna go after this person, I'm gonna make sure they go to jail, so that they had a vendetta against you. You did not get an impartial jury member, as which we talked about in the last amendment, so that violates your constitutional rights. So you should be getting a new court case. You know, but if it's just because, oh, I want a new court case because I didn't like the outcome, your rights were not violated because of that. And that clogs up the system when people say that kind of stuff, or they try to bring up something that has no bearing to their case and they're just trying to get their case re examined. It just clogs the system, you know? But again, if there is really something true, like new evidence, DNA that shows that, hey, this person wasn't there at the crime, at the scene of the crime, it was, the evidence was tampered or diluted in some way or mishandled, and that was the evidence that put that person in jail, then we're getting, file for an appeal, you know, because that person's life's on the line. But if it's just because I don't like the outcome, that's why the court system's so clogged up. And that's what the amendment's trying to say. Unless you really have your rights violated in some way, no. Okay. The Eighth Amendment, excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishment. Okay, so again, bail, um, when you get out of court or get out of jail, they'll say, hey, how much is bail for something. It all varies on your whatever you're accused of doing, So something like I don't know, jaywalking, even though it applies to with excessive fines. If you got brought in for jaywalking, right, your bail should not be $6 million. That's really excessive for something so minor. You know, Somebody who killed people, yeah, chances are the judge is gonna be like, no bail. Or if a person's really rich, has access to private planes and yachts and some of that, chances are the judge is gonna say no because they're a flight risk. They have the ability to get on their own plane and go away. You know. Now the last one, cruel and unusual punishment. Um, guys, I know I heard people say like, oh, spending all that time in jail, that's cruel and that's a cruel punishment. No, it's not. There's been a lot of ways people have been tortured in the history of time. Just look at the Inquisition, for crying out loud. They used to tie people to these wheels and turn them slowly so that they cooked part of their bodies underneath some coals. And if you've ever barbecued before, you don't have to put your hand even that close to the fire. You can feel that heat if the coals are burning right. Yeah, it burns. You don't even have to get that close. So imagine someone turning a wheel slowly and that heat's just hitting you. Or they tie you up, you know, 8 feet in the air by your feet and your arms, and your arms pop out of your sockets and some of that. Yeah, that's torture with bugs and birds pecking at you and you can't do anything to brush them off. Yeah, that's torture, you know. But being in a cell, that's not torture. Okay? Is that a way to live? Absolutely not. But, that's not the definition of torture. Okay. Uh, Amendment 9 and 10, these are what I call the TARP amendments. The thing is, you have to remember, our founding fathers, they're very, very smart men. But like a lot of smart people, they know this one thing for certain. They don't know everything. And they're probably not going to know everything. But what the founding fathers did was basically made sure that um, the future, generations were going to be saved, and that no new president, new Congress could basically trample on people's rights. So that's where the Ninth Amendment comes in. It says, the enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. So basically saying, just because we didn't mention something on this Constitution, it doesn't mean you don't have the right to it. Okay? You can't just say, oh, well, it's not mentioned, so you don't have that right. No, we do have that right. And again, just because it's not mentioned, these you have to remember this is like the 1790s. These guys had no idea what a telephone was. The idea never came to their mind. The fastest way to send a message was, horse, you know, and their guns. It took 20 seconds to load up their gun back then. Now you can shoot off so many bullets from any gun in 20 seconds. So yeah, they didn't know about this stuff. They couldn't even fathom the idea of that. And that's why I said these guys, to cover the tracks, because they didn't know what the future was going to hold, said, okay, just because we didn't mention it doesn't mean you don't have the right to it. The 10th Amendment says the power not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited to it by the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. So again, just because we didn't mention it doesn't mean that the states and the people don't have that rights, and that basically the states have to respect each other's laws. So a great example of this would be like driver's license. You know, the state of California and other states say, hey, you're good enough to drive. Here's a license. You proved your point that you can drive. You know the rules of the law on the road and stuff like that. So here is this license. So they're basically announcing to other states, this person knows the rights, knows the laws. They're good to go. So just because you have a California license and you go around, this country, this great country of ours driving, they can't stop you in a place like Texas or Kansas or Tennessee and be like, hey, this is a California license. This ain't good here. They can't do that. Okay. They have to respect the state's rights of saying you took the test and you pass. And the state of California basically recognize you as you're good. You know the laws and you should be fine driving. Okay. Now, here's the thing though, with that same case, just because your state has certain laws doesn't mean other states have to follow. You can't be like, well, I'm in California where it's legal. Whoopity doo. Are you in California now? No, you're in Tennessee. You're in Texas. You're in Minnesota. You're in Ohio. You're somewhere else. So just because you leave the state and you're from the state doesn't mean those rights go with you. So a great example of this would be like here in California, someone like myself who's over the age of 21, marijuana is legal, but in other states it's illegal. So I can't just be like, oh, I'm fine because I'm a Californian and I have this, so I can do this stuff. No, because I'm now in another state where it's illegal there. Okay. So that's the thing. You just can't say, oh, I'm from this state, so it's legal, it's fine. No, where are you at that point when you get pulled over and things like that? You're in another state. Your rights don't travel with you. But, like I said, those troopers and stuff, they can't just stop you and saying, oh, your license is no good here. Okay? Because again, that would violate your rights. All right, so that's basically it for this lesson. So hopefully you learned something new. Hopefully you enjoyed this. Guys, again, I'm gonna be making a video for the Fourth and Fifth Amendment because again, it's so important, so vital that you know what those rights are. Okay, that I will be making one soon of that. And I just hope you guys like save that one, keep it in the back of your mind, because it deals with what the authorities can and cannot do, especially when it comes to probable cause and warrants, searching your car and things like that. Okay, so just keep an eye on it. I'll be making it as soon as I can so you guys can watch that. Okay, so with that being said, you guys, you take care, you be safe, and I'll see you later.